Say when. Well, guys, welcome back to Unleashed. I am so glad you're here. I'm your host, Brent Henderson, and remember, we are the Resistance. You know, over the years, one of the questions I get asked a lot when I'm speaking at game dinners is, why do I love hunting Africa? I think a lot of people think it's because of the incredible animals, maybe because of the scenery. I mean, it's amazing. The sunsets and the stars at night are incredible. You know, maybe it's because it's like an adventure that is unlike anything you will find on the earth. Those things are all true, but they're not the main reason. The reason Africa captures my heart is because nowhere else that I have ever been reminds me so quickly that human beings aren't always at the top of the food chain. Here in North America, we've got plenty of dangerous animals. We got mountain lions, we got black bears, we got grizzly bears. You go far enough north, we even have polar bears. But for the most part, those animals aren't looking for people. Most attacks happen because an animal is surprised, it's protecting its young, maybe it feels threatened. But Africa's different. When I wrote my newest book, The Big Five Man Killers, I intentionally chose Africa as the backdrop. Not because it's the only place where men face danger, but because I don't know of another place on earth where so many things can bite you, sting you, poison you, trample you, or simply decide that you're what's on the menu tonight. You know, the more time you spend there, the more you begin to realize something. You aren't always the predator. Sometimes you're the prey. History is full of stories that remind us of that. One of the most famous stories out of Africa is the story of the lions of Tsavo. Back in 1898, there were two male lions that began attacking railroad workers in what is now Kenya. Those lions became really infamous because they repeatedly hunted human beings. Whether you've read the history books or watched the movie The Ghost in the Darkness, it is a chilling reminder that people aren't always the hunters. Sometimes they're the hunted. Then there are leopards. You know, in my opinion, there may not be a more dangerous animal in Africa because you rarely see one until it's too late. They are unbelievably strong. A leopard can kill an impala or a warthog that weighs nearly as much as they do, and they'll drag that animal 20 or 30 feet right up into the branches of a tree like it's carrying a backpack. And yeah, they've been known to slip into camp after dark, not just to take dogs, but occasionally they've taken people as well. One of my dear friends is legendary South African professional hunter Dries Visser Sr. It was several years ago now. One of his hunters made a really poor shot on a leopard. And as they tracked the wounded cat through the thick brush and the grass, the leopard did exactly what wounded leopards often do. It waited. Then it exploded from the cover. I've seen the photographs of this. Dries' ear was almost torn off. There were deep claw marks raked across his scalp. His hands and wrists were shredded trying to fight the leopard off, and the leopard's canine teeth left puncture wounds in his throat where it tried to finish him off. Thankfully, Dries got help before the leopard could kill him. But he's carrying those scars for the rest of his life. And then there are the giants of Africa. An adult bull elephant can weigh over 13,000 pounds. It's crazy. You can be driving back through the African bush, and sometimes you don't even see them until you're almost on top of them. A white rhinoceros can weigh over 5,000 pounds. A Cape buffalo can weigh nearly 2,000 pounds, and a lot of professional hunters will tell you that they're among the most dangerous animals in Africa because when they're wounded, they don't always run away. Sometimes they come looking for you. And then there are the snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? You've got black mambas, you've got puff adders, you've got spitting cobras. Sometimes it feels like everything in Africa either wants to bite you, stick you, trample you, or eat you. And I have been blessed to hunt there. And one of my favorite parts of every safari is sitting around the campfire after the day's hunt. The African sky is like nothing you have ever seen. The stars seem so close you feel like you could almost reach up and touch them. As the fire is crackling, as someone is pouring another cup of coffee, the PHs, the professional hunters, begin telling their stories. Everybody is on the edge of their seat. But even while you're listening, you'll find yourself looking past the fire. Your eyes begin to drift toward the tall grass, toward the edge of the bush, You catch yourself scanning the darkness because deep down, you know something. Out there, something may be watching you. About 20 years ago, I was sitting around one of those campfires with my friend Wade, and like hunters always do, we started telling crazy stories from adventures we had experienced from around the world. And then Wade told a story that I have never forgotten. 20 years later, I can still picture every single detail. It was about a South African game ranger named Harry Woolhutter. Harry was mapping a remote section of the African bush on horseback. His dog Bull was faithfully trotting beside him while another ranger was following some distance behind. And as Harry rode into a dry creek bed, he had no idea he wasn't alone. What Harry couldn't see was that 2 lions had already seen him. Predators are patient. They don't waste energy. They don't attack until everything is in their favor. One lion suddenly exploded from the bush and charged Harry's horse. The frightened horse bolted and threw Harry violently to the ground. Now imagine the relief that Harry must have felt as that lion disappeared after the horse. He probably thought, man, that was close. But here's the thing, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That first lion wasn't the main attack, it was the distraction. Almost instantly, the second lion burst from the bush, clamped its jaws across Harry's collarbone, and began dragging him down the dried-up creek bed. The bite immediately paralyzes Harry's left side. And now before I go any further, I want to say something. If you're driving, keep both hands on the wheel, but if you're sitting at home, I want you to do something. I want you to hold up your index finger. Just look at it for a second. That's about the size of each one of a full-grown male lion's 4 canine teeth. Now imagine 4 of those teeth buried across your collarbone. A mature male lion can weigh almost 600 pounds. Now imagine your house cat carrying a mouse. That's almost what the difference is like. Harry wasn't just under attack anymore, he was being carried away. He was going to be the lion's next meal. But Harry knew something that most of us will never have to think about. If he struggled, if he panicked, if he fought back too soon, that lion would simply tighten its grip and kill him. But Harry also knew something else. If he didn't act, within just a few moments, the lion's breath was going to smell like Harry. Think about that for just a second. The predator already believed the battle was over. Harry let his one good arm slowly fall toward the 9-inch sheath knife that he had hanging from his belt. He couldn't rush, he couldn't panic, he couldn't make any sudden moves. He simply waited until the timing was perfect. As the lion took another stride, Harry drew the knife and drove it upward with everything he had left. The blade pierced the lion's chest cavity and went directly into its heart. The lion staggers around, releases his grip, and as it collapses, Harry reached up and cut its jugular vein. Within moments, the lion was dead. The predator never saw it coming. It believed it had already won. I have never forgotten that story, and not just because it's exciting or it's unbelievable, but because every time I hear it, I'm reminded that predators don't succeed by accident. They succeed because they study, they watch, they wait, they learn. And that's exactly what I spend a lot of my time doing every summer. Right now, I've got game cameras hanging over mineral sites and over trails, and every few days I start getting new pictures. One deer, then another. Then the same buck shows up 3 evenings in a row. Pretty soon, a pattern begins to emerge. He's entering the field from the northwest, only on evenings with a southwest wind, about 30 minutes before dark, and every picture tells me something. Every image removes another piece of the puzzle. Where does he bed? What trail does he prefer? How do temperatures affect his movement? Does rain help? Does a cold front change everything? When does he feel safe enough to move? You know, people think hunting is mostly about shooting. It really isn't. It's about learning. It's about studying. It's about understanding. It's about becoming invisible. The best hunters aren't always the best shots. They're the best students. They've learned how to disappear. You don't want to be seen. You don't want to be heard. And you definitely don't want to be smelled. I tell people all the time, you can play the wind, but you can't play the sound. The second a mature buck hears something that doesn't belong, the game changes. That's one of the reasons I've trusted ATSCO products for so many years. When I'm heading into the woods, I want every advantage I can get. ATSCO's UV killer removes ultraviolet brighteners that make clothing stand out to a deer's incredible eyesight. Their Sport Wash laundry detergent cleans hunting clothes without leaving perfumes and fragrances behind. Their Sport Wash hair and body soap helps remove human odor before I ever step into the woods. And their zero odor oxidizer has become one of my favorites. It's my staple product for treating clothing and gear so that I carry as little human scent as possible. You still have to play the wind. You still have to move carefully. You still have to be quiet. But they help you become what every predator wants to become: undetected. If you'd like to learn more about ATSCO and the products that I've trusted for over 20 years, go to ATSCO, that's ATSKO.com. But here's where all of this suddenly became really personal for me. A few weeks ago, I was with my buddy Doug, and we were hanging another trail camera. And I stepped back and looked at the trail in front of me. And I started thinking about all the information that I was preparing to gather: movement, time of day, wind direction, weather, travel routes, patterns. And I felt like the Lord quietly asked me a question. Brent, if you spend this much time studying the habits of a deer, have you ever considered that your enemy has been studying yours? And it stopped me, because predators don't attack randomly. They don't waste energy. They look for weaknesses. They look for routines. They wait for distractions. They isolate. They patiently wait for the right moment. And then I remembered something Peter wrote nearly 2,000 years ago. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Peter didn't compare Satan to a fox or a wolf or a snake. He chose a lion. Why? Because lions are patient. They stalk, they wait, they look for the weak, the wounded, the distracted, the isolated, the one that wandered far away from the herd. Isn't that exactly how the enemy works? He whispers, "You'll never matter. Nobody really loves you. God can never forgive what you've done. You have failed too many times. You're never going to change." Those lies usually don't come all at once. They come one whisper at a time. And if we're not careful, we begin believing them. The enemy doesn't have to destroy your life in a single day. Sometimes he just convinces you to believe one lie after another until one day you've forgotten who you really are in Christ. But that's where this story takes a turn, because there was another day when another predator believed the battle was already over. Only this time, the prey wasn't Harry Woolhutter. It was Jesus. Think about everything that happened during those final hours. Judas betrays Christ with a kiss. One of his closest friends sold him for 30 pieces of silver. The disciples, they all scatter. Peter, the man who boldly proclaimed he would never deny Christ, he stands around at a campfire and denies even knowing him 3 times. 3 times he denies Christ. Jesus was mocked. He was spit on. He was beaten beyond recognition. There was a crown of thorns pressed into his scalp, into his brow, and a cross was laid across his wounded shoulders, and then they drive nails through his hands and through his feet. Can you imagine what Satan must have been thinking? This is it. I've won. The Son of God is dying. Darkness covers the land. The crowds mock him. Even one of the thieves hanging beside join in. Then Jesus cries out, "It is finished." His head fell forward, and he breathed his last breath. Can you imagine what hell must have sounded like? The predator believed the hunt was over. The body of Jesus was taken from the cross. It was wrapped in linen. It was placed inside of a borrowed tomb. Then a massive stone is rolled across the entrance. There were Roman soldiers that were stationed outside, and the seal of Rome was placed upon that tomb. From every human perspective, it was game over. The enemy had accomplished exactly what he wanted. The disciples thought so. They weren't planning on a resurrection. They're hiding. Fear had replaced faith, and hope had been buried with Jesus. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt like that maybe today, you're listening while you're driving to work, maybe you're sitting in your living room, maybe you're walking through the woods listening to this, and it feels like hope has been buried. Maybe your marriage is hanging on by a thread. Maybe your health, it's taken a turn like you never expected. That happened to me last summer. Maybe you've lost someone you love. Maybe you're carrying shame from something that you've done or something that was done to you. Maybe you've believed those whispers of the enemy for so long that they've started to sound like your own voice. If only. I'm not enough. God could never use me again. I've messed up too badly. Let me say something. Those aren't the voice of your Father. those are the whispers of a predator. Jesus said in John chapter 10 that the thief comes only to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Think about those three words for a second. He wants to steal your joy, he wants to kill your hope, and he wants to destroy your purpose. That has always been his strategy. He studies you, he waits, he whispers, he lies, he isolates, and then he attacks. But here's what he didn't understand. The cross wasn't his greatest victory. It was God's greatest strategy. Because what looked like defeat was actually the greatest rescue mission in human history. Because while Satan thought he was ending God's plan, he was fulfilling it. Every nail, every stripe, every drop of blood, every step towards Calvary, Jesus wasn't losing. He was paying. He was paying for my sin. He was paying for your sin. The cross wasn't proof that evil had won. It was proof that love was willing to go farther than evil ever could. And while hell celebrated Friday, heaven already knew what Sunday would bring. Because death has never been the end of God's story. The stone wasn't there to keep Jesus in. The stone was there so the world could see that he wasn't there anymore. Then the earth began to tremble. The stone was rolled away, death lost its grip, and the grave lost its prisoner, and ultimately, hell loses. They've lost what they thought was their victory. And the Lion of the tribe of Judah walks out of that tomb alive. Satan never saw it coming. And just like that lion dragging Harry through the African bush, he thought the battle was over. He believed he'd already won. But hidden inside what looked like defeat was the very thing that would become his destruction. The predator became the prey. Guys, before we wrap up today, I want to tell you about a resource that has been really personal for me. You know, many of you know my new 8-week Bible study for men, The Big 5 Man Killers, was released this summer. And the subtitle is called Declawing the Lies of the Enemy. And I chose that word, declawing, intentionally. Think about it. A lion without claws, a leopard without claws, they're still dangerous, but you've taken away one of their greatest weapons. The purpose of this 8-week study is to declaw the lies Satan has used against men for generations. Lies about your identity, lies about your purpose, your anger, your shame, your lust, your fear, your need for approval. And his goal's always been the same. It's to convince you to believe something that simply isn't true. Because if he can get you to believe a lie, he can begin to control the way you live. But here's something every hunter knows. If a dangerous animal is charging you and you're holding a weapon, but you don't know how to use it, you're in serious trouble. The weapon isn't enough. You have to know how to use it. Men, God has already given us the greatest weapon we will ever need, and that is His Word. The problem is that most of us don't know the Bible. The problem is that too many men don't know how to use it when the enemy starts whispering, when temptation comes, when shame comes, when fear comes, when discouragement comes. Jesus answered every single temptation in the wilderness the same way. He started off with, "It is written." Jesus fought lies with truth. That's why I wrote The Big 5 Man Killers. Not so men could simply read another book, but so they could pick up the sword of the Spirit, learn how to use it, and become dangerous for good. Guys, if you want to lead a group of men through this study, I've made it as easy as possible. If you go to warnerpress.org, that's WARNER press.org, and you search for The Big 5 Man Killers, you'll not only find the book, but you'll also find a free downloadable facilitator's guide that'll walk you through each one of the 8 sessions step by step. It's going to make it really easy for you to lead a group with your men. Guys, you don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a Bible scholar. Just gather your band of brothers and open God's Word. Start fighting back together. Because when a man knows the truth, the enemy loses one more place to hide. I've said this so many times that when a man knows who he is in Christ, that he's been created in the image of the living God, when he is no longer held captive by the opinions of others or cares whether he lives or dies, that man is now extremely dangerous for good, because he's been unleashed. Father God, thank you that Satan's greatest apparent victory became his greatest defeat. Thank you that because of Jesus, we don't have to live in fear of the enemy's lies. Teach us to recognize his whispers. Teach us to answer them with your truth. Help us to lift our swords again. Help us to become men who know your word, believe in your word, and live out your word. And may every man listening today become exactly who and what you've called him to be, which is dangerous for good. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Guys, the enemy thought he had won. Hell celebrated. The stone was sealed. The grave was guarded. But Sunday was coming. And when Jesus walked out of that tomb, everything changed. The predator became the prey. Here's a brand new song I put together just this week to get you guys fired up. The enemy thought he was the king until the real king showed up. That was the day the predator became the prey.
I could hear you in the darkness. You whispered like a thief. You said I'd never matter. I dragged chains behind my feet. You fed on fear and condemnation till I thought all hope was gone. But the cross rewrote my story. Now you're on the wrong side of this war. You roar like a lion. You believed your own lies. You're just a counterfeit king. Now the king has arrived. The hunter's heart was racing. He thought he won that day. When the earth began to tremble and the darkness turned to day. The veil was torn in two, death's grip was ripped away. The king came breaking through the day. The predator became the prey. Jesus' feet. The grave you thought would hold him couldn't keep him underneath. The one you came to silence now has taken back the key. So tell me, death, where is your sting? The king has won the victory. You thought the cross was your victory. The